How many of you believe that if you always do what you always did, you will always get what you always got? So how many of us get stuck in that rut? And can you succeed if you always do what you've always done? Now, what do you need to do? So you're going to use the power of the month, which is will. It's your ability to choose, decide, direct, command, and determine. So you need to make a choice to take a chance, or your life will never change. So this is a true story. A computer programmer sat at his desk, more or less working, pretending to work, and he did this every day until one day he realized this was not the life for him. So he moved from Chicago to Los Angeles, and he began his new life as a singer-songwriter. So he volunteered at the Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. He had his guitar, and he sang to the people in hospice and for those who were quite elderly. He wanted his music to heal because his family had gone through the Holocaust. So just after Hurricane Katrina, a Unity minister called him up and said, "Can we do something?" So they drove to the Houston Astrodome, and he said that he played his guitar and sang for 2 of the most intense and profoundly heartbreaking days because these people had all lost their homes. So he realized that his responsibility was to simply dig as deep as he could, feel as authentically as he could, and to share his consciousness. So, aren't we all glad that Daniel Namod chose to make a change in his life? So he went from a computer programmer to a singer-songwriter. So how many of you came to the concert? Aren't you glad that he chose that? So Charles Fillmore, co-founder of Unity, wrote, "God is more willing to give than we are to receive. He has actually placed every desire at our hand, waiting for us to get into the proper mental attitude to have them fulfilled." So how many of you go to the White Stone service? Some of you. You should come. So we usually ask ourselves, so what's our intention for the year? Has anyone had what they wrote on their White Stone come true? I have. Now, if you haven't, here's some helpful hints. Be willing to ask. Well, how do you ask? Through prayer. When you ask for Spirit's guidance, it's a statement of faith. You really want to hear what Spirit has to say, and you're ready to listen. So you have to be willing to be still. So why do you need to be still? Well, we can listen when we're still, because you can't listen if you're running all over the place. Be willing to be present. So can you do anything about yesterday? What about tomorrow? No. So the past is history, the future is a mystery, and today is a gift. And last but not least, be willing to be open. So for a Christmas service, I was kind of thinking, what am I going to speak on? And I was in a bookstore, and this book literally fell from the shelf. And it was the book that I actually used for the service. And Richard Eliason once asked me, "Are you a licensed Unity teacher?" I said, "No." Why? He said, "You'd make a darn good one." So you've got to be willing to listen. So what's the difference between willing and willful? So willful is the little girl who says, "I want a pony, I want a pony, I want a pony." But somebody who is willing is someone who does the work to get what they want. So Reverend Dr. Martha Creek was our speaker at the Canadian conference, and she is a prime example of someone who is willing. So in her book, Presence and Potential, she describes that she wanted to travel. Well, she already worked full-time, she had a mortgage, she was going to school, and she thought, okay, how am I going to do this? But then she heard American Airlines would let you travel for free if you worked for them. So after her corporate job, she would go and work 6 o'clock at night till 10. She would load bags, she would go and help the planes. She did anything she could so she could travel. So did she succeed? She's been to all 7 continents twice. So where there's a will, there's a way. So what does way stand for? Work the principles and spiritual truth. A is access spirit. How do you access spirit? Praying. And Y, yield to divine ideas, not the outer appearances. What does that mean? So you're paying attention to the inner, not the outer. So Rumi wrote a poem called The Bread Basket, which says, there is a fountain inside of you. Don't walk around with an empty bucket. There's a basket of fresh bread on your head, and you go around looking for crumbs. So who was faster than a speeding bullet and more powerful than a locomotive? Superman, that's right. But superheroes have weaknesses as well. So what was Superman's weakness? Kryptonite, that's right. Green Lanterns use their will to turn their thoughts into reality, which is limited only by their imagination. So what makes a Green Lantern weak? Nobody watches the Marvel comics, do they? Okay, fear. But they can admit and overcome that fear and be courageous because will is stronger than fear. So does anyone remember what happened on July the 20th, 1969? Who? That's right. So watching Neil Armstrong take his first step on the moon, Chris Hadfield knew that he wanted to be an astronaut. At that time, Canada didn't even have a space program. Plus, guess what Chris was afraid of? Heights. Well, what do you think would have happened if Chris had let his fear get in the way of his dreams? Well, Chris is now 65 years old. His accomplishments are probably equivalent to several people's lifetimes. He's a retired astronaut, engineer, fighter pilot, musician, and a writer. So Chris used to ask himself, is what you are doing today getting you closer to where you want to be tomorrow? So for those of you who've ever set a goal, think about that. Is what you are doing today getting you closer to where you want to be tomorrow? So I'm going to share a TED Talk by Richard Turere. He was a Maasai student who lives in Kenya by the Nairobi National Park. And I actually went to Africa in 2011, and I've been to Nairobi and to the national park, so I thought this is actually near and dear to me. So for the countries that have wild animals, they just wander around wherever they want. You can't really hem them in. So as all good young Maasai warriors, he was a young boy, but his job was to guard the cattle. And in Africa, you don't ask, how much money do you have? You ask, how many cows do you have? So this talk, his topic was called My Invention That Made Peace with Lions. So one day he found that a lion had killed one of the cattle, and he was very upset. So the warriors who protected the village went out and killed the lion, and he went, oh dear, this isn't good. He wanted to solve the problem because he felt that, like all Maasai, that all creatures come from heaven, so everything was sacred. So he thought, okay, what about fire? Well, the fire just lit everything up, and then it helped the lions to see. Well, he tried a scarecrow, but that didn't work. So then he thought, okay, he discovered that lions were afraid of moving lights. And he discovered, okay, how do I get the lights to move, but I still need to sleep? So he took apart his mother's new radio, she almost killed him, and learned about electricity. He used an old car battery, an indicator switch from a motorcycle turn signal, a bulb from a flashlight, and a solar panel. So he ended up with moving lights. Well, the lions thought there's somebody there, we can't go near the cows, and Richard got to sleep in his own bed. So there were no more problems with the lions in the village. Well, not only is Richard's invention used all over Kenya to scare predators away, but he won a scholarship to one of the best schools in Kenya. His closing remark was, "1 year ago, I was just a boy in the savannah herding my father's cows, and I used to see planes flying overhead. I thought, one day I want to get a chance to fly in a plane. So here I am today, and I got a chance to come here by plane. My big dream is to become an aircraft engineer and a pilot, and I used to hate lions, but since my invention is saving my father's cows and the lions, we are able to live with the lions without any conflict." Marianne Williamson says success means that we go to sleep at night knowing that our talents and abilities were used in a way that served others. So how many of you have had to deal with lions in your life? Well, were you able to use your power of will, your talents and abilities, or did you sink into that old way of thinking of you weren't capable, you didn't deserve it, you didn't have enough, you weren't bright enough, or they wouldn't let you? So giving up on your goals because of one setback is like getting a flat tire and then slashing your other 3 tires. So the Unity World Day of Prayer is coming up. Anyone know when? September 10th to 11th. And this year's theme is Be Still and Know. Anyone know how it started? Well, in 1993, ministerial students at Unity Village were given a class assignment. And somebody suggested, well, why don't we have a day of prayer? So the seed was planted. So people gathered by the fountains, and the poet James Dillett Freeman read a poem. The next year, the official World Day of Prayer came to be. So this will be the 32nd anniversary. What do you do here at Unity for World Day of Prayer here? Pray. So from class assignment to worldwide spiritual event, the World Day of Prayer has become the pause to pray. So Reverend Lynn Brown, who was the vice president of Unity, Silent Unity, said, it's never become rote, never routine. It's absolutely spirit infused. It's time for recognizing there's something greater than ourselves, knowing we have a divine purpose, realizing our consciousness of oneness. So how many of you wake up each day knowing your divine purpose and oneness with God? Sharon does, and Gail does. So this may help you. Dear Lord, so far today I've done all right. I haven't gossiped, haven't lost my temper, haven't been nasty, self-indulgent, or selfish. I'm very thankful for that. But in a few minutes, God, I'm going to get out of bed. And from then on, I'm going to need all the help I can get. Amen. So once there was a man whose life was miserable. The days were cloudy and the nights were long. Henry didn't want to be unhappy, but he was. With the passing of the years, life had changed. His children had grown and gone away. The neighborhood had changed, and the city seemed harsher. He decided to ask his pastor what was wrong. Am I unhappy for something? And the pastor said, yes. You're unhappy for a sin. Well, what sin have I committed? So he says, ignorance. You have sinned from ignorance. One of your neighbors is the Messiah. Now, the language that this is, and I realized that Patricia did her talk last week about language from the 1800s versus now. So you can take Messiah or whatever name you want. One of your neighbors is the Messiah in disguise, and you have not seen him. Henry left the office stunned. The Messiah is one of my neighbors? Who could it be? Tom the butcher? No, he's too lazy. My cousin down the street? No, he gossips too much. What about the man who lives next door? Everyone he knew had defects, but the pastor said one of them was the Messiah. So Henry started looking, and he began to notice things that he hadn't seen before. The grocery clerk often carried heavy items to the cars for the seniors. Maybe he was the Messiah. The man at the candy store always smiled at everyone, even the kids who didn't buy anything. With time, he saw things in people that he'd never seen. And with time, his outlook began to change. The bounce returned to a step. His eyes took on a healthy sparkle. And when others spoke, he listened. After all, he might be listening to the Messiah. When anyone asked for help, he didn't hesitate. After all, it might be the Messiah needing assistance. The change of attitude was so significant that someone asked him why he was so happy. I don't know, he answered. All I know is that things changed when I started looking for God. So if you're having difficulty trying to find God or making peace with lions in your life, what can you do? Express gratitude. Now, when you appreciate what you have appreciates in value. Serving others. Helping someone is a powerful way to feel good inside. Have you ever gone out of your way or just did something normally? You've given something and you actually felt good about it. And you forgot about how you were feeling. Forgive yourself. Now, that is really, really hard. Sometimes we just hold on to grudges, but if you hold on to a grudge, it's kind of like drinking poison and hoping the other person's going to die. Pray and meditate. That is so important. How many of you take time out? And thank you for being here to participate in church where you get to pray and meditate. And affirming your oneness with God. So let's recap. You must make a choice, or you must make a choice to take a chance to make a change in your life. Think of the blessings that Daniel Nahmod gave the world when he left his job as a computer programmer and became a singer-songwriter. Martin Luther King wrote, "Use me, God. Show me how to take who I am, who I want to be, and what I can do and use it for purposes greater than myself." The power of will is yours to help you achieve your goals and give you the life you want. Namaste.